Let me tell you where we're at, my friends. We got the story I want to pull up. Quote, "We need to stiffen our spines and lean in to keeping people safe and healthy. Governor Newsom says his recall success proves Democrats need to get tougher with COVID restrictions so there can be peace."
Awesome.
They're going to give us
that
these
last part I
restrictions
added.
forever.
That wasn't in the headline. But yeah, so basically what happened was since the recall failed, Gavin Newsom stood up before the state legislature in California and says, "The attempt on my governorship has left me scarred and deformed, and I will reform California into the first, state empire."
It's just
I'm
not
kidding,
the
but-
government's responsibility to keep us safe. That's not their job. That's not what they've been tasked to do by the voters. That's not what they were tasked to do by, the founding fathers, who all managed to find themselves in the same place at the exact right time.
But here's the issue. They tried to recall Newsom, and a bunch of conservatives said he's going to now punish the people of California with harsher lockdowns, and he's doing it.
And he's going to. I mean, right after the election, that's when LA put in place their Vax Pass rules.
Yep.
They waited till right after the election.
I got to be honest. I really do think that Newsom was sitting in his office like this, looking at the TV. And then when CNN was like, Wolf Blitzer comes on, it looks like a landslide victory for Newsom. He went,
Yes.
That's how I imagine the
I can
guy.
see it, yeah.
That's a really good evil villain laugh.
I was just trying to imitate
great.
Dr. Evil,
Dr.
right?
Evil.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he
Gorgeous.
did.
Yeah, that's
the
good.
way
Yeah.
Tim laughs.
And then everyone around him's like, ha ha, and they're laughing.
Yeah.
That's how I imagine it. Because now he's like, you just imagine Gavin Newsom looking over. Who's the lieutenant governor? And he's like, can we put more lockdowns on Los Angeles? Let's punish the people there. Let's make them really hurt. That would be fun.
I think
wouldn't
that's
it?
what de Blasio is doing. I think he's
Oh, yeah.
intentionally
Yeah.
punishing New York City.
Did they ever get the sand out of the skate park?
They did.
Oh, Jesus.
did?
Yeah. That was
okay.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm surprised skateboarders didn't show up with leaf blowers and start blowing it out. But they did go there and sweep and
I feel like
start skating
vacuum
anyway.
would be more effective.
Yeah.
But isn't it how crazy is it that people still want to live in these places? I guess the issue is a dumb population is an easily controlled population.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would willingly move to New York at this point, or California, or really any of these
Or Illinois.
places.
I was talking to a family member, and my family's in Chicago, and they said it's miserable, it's awful.
Oh,
it's worse than it's ever been. Like
Is
you
it
can't.
the crime, or is it?
No, it's the
all of
lockdowns.
There's lockdowns in Chicago.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what's going on, but I have family in the suburbs, and they're like, everyone's like, you can't go anywhere without a mask. They've got mandates popping up all over the place. The schools are freaking out. It's like authoritarian nightmare.
In Brooklyn, it's back to everybody walking around with masks on outside,
Yeah.
like fools. And
And
I'm
in-
just walking around like a normal person without my mask on because why? Because I've done the vaccination. I've done the thing that they said, and it's never enough. It's never going to be enough.
Let's talk about two
doing
Americas.
the thing.
There's two Americas right now. In New York, people walk around outside wearing masks. In West Virginia, people walk around outside wearing their AR-15s. Which one
Yeah.
would you want to live in? No, I mean
No.
this seriously, though. Obviously, not everybody in West Virginia is walking around with like a rifle and they're like looking around. But there are people who do that. We went to, we were driving through Virginia. And Virginia's not a good example, but we were on our way to central West Virginia. And there's like people at restaurants and they're strapped. They got their guns and stuff. And so you think about the two different Americas. The people in New York would probably scream and freak out.
Oh, they
if
would freak out.
Yeah.
They would freak out.
Like there's that photo of a guy and he's got a
You're
bazooka.
not allowed to like carry guns in New York. You're not allowed to have concealed. You're not allowed to carry openly. There's
unless,
none of that.
Unless you're an agent of the state.
Right.
yeah.
If
Which
you're
they
the
like.
Yeah. The
So-
cops are allowed to.
When I'm in, people have asked me, like, if I was in West Virginia and I saw a guy walking around with, like, a bunch of guns and, like, an AR-15 and, like, a shotgun, would you, like, run? What would you do? And I'd be like, I probably wouldn't think anything at all. I wouldn't. I'm like, that guy's got guns. Now, if he had, like, carrying a ton of guns, I would especially not worry. You know why? He's not going to be able to move around. So, like, you see someone with a gun. I'm like, I see people driving cars all the time. I never expect a car to veer off the road and slam into me.
You know
I
what's
don't
funny
expect
is-
a person to pull out a gun and shoot at me.
I always expect the car to veer off the road and get me.
No,
like-
that's New York, I guess, right?
No, I mean, even just driving up, I've only had my license for literally a year. But yeah, when I drive around, I think like it would be so easy to kill me right now.
Isn't that crazy?
People
be
just go,
simple.
I used to, when I was a kid, I'd be like, what if everyone in the world wanted to, all of a sudden just wanted to kill me? How long could I survive?
5 seconds, like 5
yeah,
seconds.
yeah. There's nowhere to.
not
No, we're so vulnerable. We're incredibly vulnerable creatures.
That's why we need exosuits like
Yes.
Gundams. And that's what we should do. All of the profits from Timcast Media will be funneled into an R&D project for building the first mobile suit Gundam. And then when the Antifa shows up to my house, I'll be like, haha, fly off into space.
What it really means is that we have to accept risk as a component of existence. We
Yeah.
need to be relatively fearless in the face of that. We need to know that we're going to die, that we can't just be protected all of the time. We need to accept that. We need to revel in it. And we need to step out our front doors willingly and accept all of that, accept that we're not safe and that it's fine. It's fine to not be safe.
Yes, but
it's good to take risks. If we don't take risks, that we have no reward.
But this is the issue is that, of course, we know that. Of course, the people watching know this, but the cult doesn't care.
No.
Like, they want to win. They want to crush you. It's fun.
But look at what they want. They want to go to school they want to have secondary and whatever education for free. If they've paid for it, they want that money back, or they want to not have to pay for it. They want rent to be fully covered. They want the government to pay out money endlessly if you don't have a job, or if you just don't want to get a job or whatever. They want to require businesses to pay certain wages, higher than the current minimum wage. They want to do all of these things in order to control society, in order to regulate how everybody is to live their lives. And there's no room where are the artists going to come from? Where are the entrepreneurs going to come from? Where are the explorers going to come from? The left has completely forgotten that in our hearts, we are a race of explorers.
NFTs.
The left is a Picasso painting, and the right is like an IKEA instruction pamphlet.
If what you're saying is we have no conservative culture, you are correct.
Yeah.
Well, no, what I mean
that
is
an issue.
the right is like very straightforward, and here's what we believe, here's why we believe it, here's what we want, here's what we're going to do, and then they kind of just like, it's not used. It's tossed to the side,
Right.
and then someone tries jamming the thing together without actually.
And crappy materials.
And yes, and the
Poor
left
tools.
is a Picasso painting where you're like, I think that's a person. Your policies are a mishmash that come together, and it's not a readable document. So I love the easiest example to understand why a lot of leftist policies make no sense. We'll use the Green New Deal. When they started talking about a Green New Deal, I was like, I like how this sounds. What are you saying? Like, we'll allocate government funding from like war R&D into like renewable energies. Maybe. What if they start doing infrastructure projects to reduce our dependence on foreign energy and things like that, and create maybe fusion ignition? A Green New Deal sounds pretty good. A major jobs project that works us towards energy independence. That'll make us more. That'll improve the economy. And then AOC comes out and goes, free college and free healthcare. And if you're not white, we'll give it to you first. And I'm like, that's not a Green New Deal at all.
Has anyone
Green New Deal.
proposed a Green New Deal like you just said?
No.
Why?
Okay, well, to be fair, probably. But AOC's Green New Deal was like, and you'll get free college, and people who aren't white will get reparations or something like that. I don't think she actually said reparations, but it was like identitarian, free college. Then you had on her website saying like, we need to stop air travel and farting cows. And I'm not exaggerating, literally said farting cows. And I'm like, dude, I made a video where I was like, a Green New Deal sounds great. Because we've been nation building in other countries for so long. We talked about it here. We were like, what if we did nation building in our own country?
That would be actually kind of cool.
A Green New Deal, right?
Yeah.
Instead, what we get from the progressives is this mishmash of social justice trash that has nothing to do with the environment.
But
I
also don't. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We don't get enough from like we said. There hasn't been a counter proposal that is obvious enough.
The Republicans are trash.
Exactly.
The Republicans are like, the Democrats go, we would like to infringe upon your right to keep and bear arms. And the Republicans just are like, no, don't.
No, don't.
Mm-hmm.
And then one by one, more and more laws come in. And then you'll get these Republicans who are like, I don't think it's a good bill. And we shouldn't pass a law infringing the rights to keep and bear arms. And then their aide will lean over and go, the New York Times just called you a Nazi. I always wanted to ban guns. I was the first one who wanted to do it. And so step by step, our rights are being eroded, particularly the Second Amendment. And Republicans don't come out and say, I would like to repeal all the NFA. Like, where is the Republican? Literally, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert, can you please propose repealing the NFA? Why won't even Lauren Boebert do that? She's like the proest gun Republican. Maybe she has. Maybe I'm wrong. But I certainly think they should come out and be like, NFA, gone.
I think a lot of this comes down to there not being any conservative culture. I mean, these values that you're talking about, you know, and I think freedom of speech is actually well under attack as well, but it's being attacked more from the corporate side, fully backed by the federal government. But we don't have a conservative culture movement that shows these values, that gives voice to these concerns in a way that shows up every day on people's, you know, TikTok streams or TV shows or movies or in books or anywhere. You know, we just don't see it. I was listening to Jack Posobiec has a new podcast, and he was talking about his children's book, which is like an anti-communist book for kids. We're at the point where we need anti-communist books for kids.
That's right.
What is this? You know, and I think a lot of this has to do with the failure of the conservative movement to provide entertainment options or anything that people want to consume.
I think people
are
are
correct.
I mean, I'm personally allergic to identifying left or right in the first place. I can't make myself do it. So, and I think that that's quite common with the youth. So, you know, I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, I feel like the labels are just dead.
Well, sure.
Well, no. Let's be real. I mean,
all the forms are known.
Left and right are. They used to mean, they sort of meant something.
It was the French. The French is from French Parliament.
But
the
I mean,
people
like,
sat on the left and the people sat on the right.
It's completely meaningless today.
Oh, that's neat.
They're
from the revolutionaries.
Yeah, the right were reactionaries opposing. They didn't want to have a revolution. It's tribal signifiers at this point. If you are in favor of the Democratic establishment, you are typically the left. If you are in opposition to the establishment politics, which includes neocons, Republicans, never Trumpers, then you are on the right. Whether you believe in right-wing politics or not, it's meaningless. So basically, I can be like, I'm pro-choice. I would like universal health care. And they're like, Tim's right-wing. And I'm like, tell me which politician I would vote for in the Republican Party if that's the case. Because I was like, Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang seem all right. And then, you know, I have my criticisms of them as well. I would vote for Rand Paul because he seems to be like the only principled. Well, I'm sorry, that's not fair. Thomas Massey's pretty awesome too. But there's like very few actually principled people in government at all. And then even when I do look at people like Ted Cruz or Hawley, I'm like, I just don't agree outside of the liberty stuff. So politically homeless, I guess, but it doesn't matter. If you believe in freedom, that's the right. Because you'll see these
freedom
people.
Is political. And
Absolutely.
What was the New York Times headline?
I don't know which one.
Where they were saying like the right-wing freedom chanting. Remember?
Freedom chanting?
They were
Freedom
in
chanting.
Cuba, they were chanting.
right.
Anti-government.
Yeah.
And then, and then the White House was like, they just want more vaccines. That's what they're looking for.
Where is anybody on the actual left to say mandating vaccines is wrong? There have been some Black Lives Matter protesters saying vaccine mandates are wrong. Legit.
Weren't there some outside the CDC in Atlanta today?
I don't know
Minaj?
if they were Black Lives Matter though.
Oh, were they not?
Yeah, I don't know, but it was a bunch of young black people who were protesting, saying Nicki Minaj was correct, Fauci's lying. So what ends up happening is you do have your overarching, you know, conservative Inc., and then you have establishment left, which includes the faux progressives, these big YouTube channels and streamers who claim to be on the left, but then like buy themselves extravagant houses or try to union bust in their own companies. So left and right.
You know, when someone says something, because I'm on the right, Jack said it a couple times last night. I didn't say anything about it, but when they do that, here's my label. They've lost. They've fallen in the swamp and they sunk and they died. You cannot label yourself and get through this. This is not a political.
All right, cult or not cult. We'll do that.
Cult or not cult.
And then you got to define the cult too.
Yeah. So like, do you challenge narratives? Who was it? Was it Mark Twain? That if you find yourself in the majority, you should,
Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius said that.
That's an old one.
You should question what you're thinking if you find yourself in line with the majority.
So, there are some things that I'm like, I believe this and I will stand by it. And that means I'm willing to criticize high-profile individuals who might, be friends of mine or might have, certain access that I would benefit from. But I'm not going to. Jim Brewer, best example. When he canceled his shows over the vaccine mandate, he was like, I'm not going to be beholden to this system of money, if to do something I don't believe in. And I'm like, right on, Jim Brewer. Rad dude.
Well, this is why language matters so much. And like, Huxley and Orwell were obsessed with it. And it's just like, we have to be specific in the language, because obviously conservatism is a great principle. Liberalism should be a great principle.
But those words,
I don't want.
I
know they don't mean anything, but I'm just saying using them is so limiting, and the language is being hijacked. That's what's happening. So we have to be specific in the language that we're using.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting too that even in our cultural conversations, we are adhering to a two-party system. Why?
Well, I mean, I think the Mises Caucus guys are legit, and we've had Dave Smith here many, many times, because they're like the best we've got at this point, and like they're pro-life. I don't agree with them on a lot of things, but I agree with them on enough. At least we can identify a lot of the problems. And I'm like, if the Republicans won't even identify the problems, and the establishment Democrats are reveling in the problems, I'll take the Mises Caucus guys who are at least pointing to it. That's bad. Here's our plan. I'm like, I don't know if your plan's going to work, but at least you're going to put it's like the Republicans and the Democrats are ignoring the fire, or the Democrats are lighting the fire, and the Libertarians like, we got a plan to put it out. And I'm like, I don't care what your plan is. Do it, dude.
That's why we need to do things outside of politics. Politics should really not be the top thing that we're dealing with.
I think politics is irrelevant.
We're building technology.
Culture. We should be making art. Why are we not out there making more art?
Yes, exactly.
I miss making art. I used to do that all the time.
You're doing it right now.
You were just saying this about conservatives, though. They're not offering. Actually, you both kind of made a similar point. You said, where's the conservative rebuttal or offer after the Democrats do something? And you said conservatives aren't building, they're not making art and culture to inspire or whatever.
Right.
That's it. Like the left has, I'll tell you.
And art also doesn't need to be about any of those things. I mean, your values come through in the art that you create because you are a principled individual who believes in things and expresses with your heart.
That's a lot of what we're trying to do with the new shows we're launching. It's not to make political content to convince anybody of any ideas, but it's to tell stories that will inspire, and our values are conveyed through.
I want to help teach people how to cook. Yes. I actually want to learn how to cook while I'm at it.
Wait, you're really doing a cooking show?
Binging with Ian.
A couple days ago. Another one went up yesterday. I said, you want to avoid the sodium chloride and use salt. I meant sodium benzoate. Sodium chloride is salt. Thank you, YouTube. Thank you, everybody.
So check it out.
I love to cook.
Oh, me too.
I do think...
Join my cooking show.
Okay.
I do think that there's a possibility of a polar shift in culture that prevents a total collapse. I still think it's most likely there is a collapse, but what I'm getting at is, when it comes to the creation of culture, the establishment is failing miserably, and it's getting worse and worse. Since Gamergate and Comicsgate and all this stuff, it has continually just been rather bad in a lot of ways. Now, some stuff's shined through and been okay. A lot of stuff has been bad, like the new The Craft remake, which was actually like a sequel, and it made literally no sense, and it was just jamming in a bunch of woke plot points that I'm very confused by. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, they cast a spell to turn a guy gay.
A lot of that stuff is just unwatchable.
It's like watching those Christian productions. We said this before. Like,
Pure Flix.
Yeah, Pure Flix. Like, I don't know. I don't want to rag on Pure Flix. I haven't seen it. But it's like those low grade, like poorly produced, conservative bro, like right Christian content that we used to make fun of. Like, I think even Seamus mentioned Bible Man and stuff.
Yes.
And it's like not inspiring. Kids want to watch X-Men. And now, you know what I love about X-Men is the allusions to civil rights, right?
Right.
But now the left is latching onto that and making X-Men, they're trying to make it like woke. The comics have definitely gotten woke.
Yeah, they're doing like all Marvel wokey stuff on Disney.
And its sales are going down.
I really want a Star Trek. And mystery shows.
Wasn't Discovery woke?
I didn't watch it.
Yeah, me neither.
No, I just watched DS9 again instead.
That works.
Right?
Yeah.
Because something was special about that era in Star Trek.
Yes.
So
it was like, what, 93 that launched?
89. The Next Generation, I think.
Next Generation was 88? Like 88.
Yeah.
And then DS9 was like, I think 93.
Yeah, I think so. And then it went into like the late 90s, and then they did Enterprise, and it was just...
Enterprise was garbage.
Yeah.
It had so much promise, too. The great story, Scott Bakula, one of my favorites.
I didn't want a sequel. We just had the Dominion War. Come on.
Yeah.
And now we get these weird, hokey pseudo sequels. I'll tell you, Picard was pretty good. I like Picard. And you can do the social justice stuff right. But the problem is they're not doing it right.
Look at the social justice stuff that they did on DS9 when Benjamin Sisko went back in time and was a... Sorry. Okay.
Nerding out.
Yeah. Anyway, but
what happened?
They went back in time San Francisco, and he was a sci-fi writer. And so he wrote a story about a black space captain in the future. And the publishers of the magazine said, no, we can't run this with a black space captain. And they ended up deciding to run it. But it was a dream that it was a black space captain, which, you know, there were so many layers in there. And that character in the timeline ended up in a mental institution, scribbling his stories on the wall. I mean, it was transcendent. It transcended. It was just perfect.
Deep Space Nine was fantastic.
Great. Avery Brooks was killer.
We got recommended the episode. I think it's called "In the Pale Moonlight," and it's where Cisco stages what I'm forgetting, but basically he stages a conflict to force the Romulans to enter the war on the side of the Federation.
Yeah,
and it's like conspiracy, evil stuff. It's that show was fantastic.
It was fantastic, and he was such a complicated captain.
I look back at, I thought about this. I'm like, Picard was good, and let me just stress too, if you're not a Trekkie, don't worry. Like I want to keep this like, you know, at the surface level. The new show that came out, Picard, they're doing a season. I'm like, it's a good show. But it was not profound.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It was not profound, not thought-provoking, it didn't inspire me to do anything. It was like, it's really fun to see Riker and Picard hanging out. Mm-hmm. But when you watch the original Star Trek, like, but mostly I like The Next Generation better. When you watch The Next Generation, it deals with the philosophical consequences of technological advancement and other societies' advancement. Stargate does that really, really well as well.
You told me to watch that. I still have to watch that.
It's not the same, but it's similar. And it's like, we had these shows in the 90s that were like, here's a civilization that dealt with that, you know, instead of inventing electricity, they discovered, you know, plasma or something. And then it's like, how did they develop? What are their ideas? There's that really, really, really great moment where Data asks Picard about terrorism. And he says, something troubles me about, you know, these people and their conduct. And you know, we say terrorism is bad, yet it seems their strategies are effective. And often throughout history, we have seen these actions actually bring about political change. And Picard is like, humans have been struggling with these questions for generations. And I do not subscribe to the belief that political power is derived from the barrel of a gun. And I'm like, that was like, who are these writers who are just like thought-provoking philosophers? You know what else I was thinking of? When you hear about quotes from famous people like Ben Franklin, it's because only so many of his words could actually be translated through history, could actually be handed down, because he would write books and he would write things. But of all of the words the man said, probably 0.001% of his ideas have made it throughout history. Today, you have these writers of these shows building culture and giving these profound ideas on like the make of a man when Data is on when there's a trial to determine whether he's a sentient, independent life form.
That's a great
The people who wrote that are brilliant philosophers. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to take their names and put the quotes down. We're going to put Picard, Data, you know?
I think about the value that TV and radio has given us as a species, and it's so great because it's our ability to transmit information and like you said, to pass the knowledge down. It's also created this danger where you see Hitler using the mass media to brainwash the people, and like how the media today is kind of brainwashing. So, but I think that the value outweighs the danger so greatly. So I imagine that that's a very, very good sign for our species.
Do you think it's a coincidence that the best memes came out of that time of Star Trek?
Like all the memes that come up on the internet are like from TNG?
From that period.
It's not surprising.
Yeah.
You know what? You mentioned the 90s, and I think the 90s to a certain extent were our reward for a difficult century. There was so much prosperity. I remember there just being, I was a kid, basically. I mean, I was like in my late teens and in my 20s, and there was just money everywhere. I remember this. I was like hanging out with a bunch of visual artists. Everyone was getting paid to do something ridiculous, and instead was blowing it all on like
it was the Cold
dinner
War
and
dividend.
Strippers and stuff. We had a great time. But yeah, that was like the reward. It was a cultural reward. There was art everywhere. There was amazing music came out of that era. We had an awful lot of equality. We had an awful lot of equality between the sexes. Women could do whatever they wanted.
The internet emerged, and then the .com just went too far.
Well, I think I think a lot
China.
of it too was September 11th. We had like a massive terrorist attack shortly thereafter, and that made everything crazy.
It was the Cold War dividend. Cold War ended, and all of a sudden we were like, what do we do with all this money and all these resources and all these plans
and all these troops?
We made a lot of art in the 90s. There was really good visual art came out of that period.
But then China started to emerge as a greater power. And then you had a bunch of problems here in the U.S., like the repeal of Glass-Steagall, and then the economic crisis. And now China's gaining more and more power. And now perhaps one of the biggest issues is that we, as a nation, have no ability to stop China from taking over as the global superpower and global economic power. And it's just like the U.S. at this point has become too feeble to fight back.
As a nation, yeah, but not as people. We do
China. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think with crypto and local governance, we can do it. But
that's great. We'll have small pockets of independent, freedom-loving people who are tending to their chickens, which is fine. But China will be dominating the culture of the planet like the U.S. did for so long. Then they'll start putting out their ideas of why freedom is bad, and it's already happening. We're already starting to adopt more of the Chinese communist-style governance and political control.
Oh, I just saw a story that the Chinese are going to start doing social credit on corporations now.
Yes, that's correct. I saw that too.
That's wild.
Welcome to the dystopian future.
They're also regulating content a lot more now too. That's a whole big thing.
Yeah, they ban kids from playing video games for more than like an hour a night or something.
3 hours a week.
But even though they banned Bitcoin mining in China, it's not going to stop the people of China from rapidly adopting it. I mean, you can't just assume that there's monoculture in terms of the thought process of the citizens of China. Like crypto is still going to dominate. That
makes sense. That the people are not homogenous in terms of their perspective, but they are showing themselves to be relatively squashable. Hong Kong is not Hong Kong anymore. There's a genocide going on. And Pelosi, I think from that same interview that you pulled up earlier, she was saying that, yes, China is committing genocide against the Uyghurs, but it's more important that we team up with them about climate change. I mean, we're idiots, for letting this kind of thing happen. China also, though, had a long period of time while the West was engaging in the age of exploration and all of that, where they were basically just isolationists. The U.S., I think, should have a lot more ability to control its own destiny in terms of energy independence, in terms of manufacturing independence. One thing Trump did was he tried to get more pharmaceutical production in the U.S., localized in the U.S., which I think obviously we should be doing. Why are we... for decades, we let so many Asian countries basically be the factories of the U.S. and the factories of U.S. corporations and U.S. commerce. And there's no reason to keep doing that.
We got gutted.
I mean, except that Americans probably don't want to work any of these jobs, what with the free money being flooded out by the government.
It's going to be a cold splash of water in the face when Americans who do these these fake jobs like I tell that story when I first went to Vice and saw how much people were getting paid and what they did for a living. I was like, wow. If working class people in this country could see inside New York media, there would be a revolution overnight. Could you imagine working $15 an hour doing labor, only to discover that someone's getting paid $50 an hour to scour the internet for pictures of a celebrity, and then they don't show up half the time?
Right. They don't show up half the time.
And they don't got to go to work. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
The Vice office would be empty half the time. And I'd be like, oh, where is, so-and-so? And they'd be like, home. They'll write something, I guess.
I can only imagine the conversations they have in the board of directors of CNN, when they're behind the scenes at MSNBC. If we had access to that and we got to listen in on that, yeah, I think there would be a revolution overnight.
The issue I'm bringing up is that there are people who work hard every single day and they come home with calloused hands, sweat pouring, drenched in sweat, and they sit down and their back hurts and they go to the doctor and the doctor's like, Jim, you got a slip disc. And he's like, getting paid, $40,000 a year doing the stuff. And it's like, his body is in pain. Then there are guys who it's like, they finally got that promotion. They're working really, really hard and they're older. And then there's a 20-year-old getting paid double their salary in New York to complain about you for voting for Donald Trump. And they say, you're a moron. You're a dumbass. You're so stupid. And that guy's breaking his back to build the infrastructure in this company. Every one of these construction guys who's out there fixing the roads.
And to bring you your stuff.
Yeah. And then they say you're a maggot and a plague rat and they get double the money you make.
I find it still so shocking because it's what the country's basically half and half at this point. It was like, what, 74 million people voted for Trump. The other half kind of voted for the other guy. Yeah.
Voted against Trump.
Right, voted against Trump is basically what they did. But then also the thing with the, I think there have been a number of polls coming out recently showing that it's like 51% of Americans are in favor of vaccine mandates and 49% are not. I know that that's one poll I saw. So it's definitely like half and half. And one half of the country is telling the other half of the country that they're garbage. And that half of the country is the one doing all of the work.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.